And welcome back to the Book and Life podcast with your host today, Crystal Fleming. And it's my absolute joy to have this fellow writer on my show. You know, I always feel grateful when I have a fellow Shetlander on because it feels like we're together and we're doing this incredible feat together. And it's just really cool. So, with that being said, I need to do the ads for today, and you know who they are. It's Marianne Curley's book 4 of the Shadow Guardian series. So let's just have a listen to the blurb. The Shadow is the name of the book. The battle is over, the war is won, the prophecy complete, but life can't just pick up where it left off for Ethan, struggling to cope with tragic loss. At odds with friends in the guard, he finds himself adrift, jumping at shadows and sensing someone who can't possibly be there. Blaming herself, the god of Athena's death, Giselle swears revenge and following the immortals' plan for world domination. But Giselle hadn't planned on love, and that leaves her with an unbearable choice. Should she follow her heart or the strings of goddess, short on praise but high on expectation, who continues to pull her from the grave? As the guard and the order battles through the past and into an impossible future, darkness lurks around every corner. The fight for the world's survival rests with just one. Is it friend or foe who stands in the shadow? The Price of Freedom by Rosemary Rao is one of her Roman British crime series novels under her maiden name. All editions can be found online, and all proceeds are being donated to the Ukraine crisis along with her agent's commission. So, now I am more than honoured and delighted to introduce to you Chris Tait. And now I have the distinct pleasure of interviewing and having a conversation with a fellow Shetlander known as Chris Tait. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yes, I'm a poet, playwright and spoken word artist.
Yeah, and those are actually harder than people realize. I don't think so could you maybe explain to people what that entails?
Sure. Well, I've just recorded an audio play. I got some funding and I was able to record it at the Doubletree Theatre in Carnoustie. And I wanted the actors to be paid. That's something I always insist. So I was encouraged to apply for funding, and I was able to give actors the opportunity in the Dundee, Perth and Angus area. And as well, I was able to employ like photographers and a fiddle player for Shetland and a video artist. So my play is called A Tune Built Upon Shenanigans. And it's about 3 characters, a butcher, a baker and a candlestick maker. And they each have disabilities and they really struggle to get jobs. So they find a book written by a character called Diablo, and this inspires them. They think it's like the Holy Grail, and they sail in a gravy boat to Shetland. And when they're there, they really struggle financially and to get jobs. So they get into trouble and they rob a bank. And then they're saved by their friend Pinocchio. He leads them astray too, but there's a court case. And then Pinocchio's mum is Old Mother Hubbard and his dad is Scrooge. And eventually they get support and opportunities. And the other thing that I do is, as a spoken word artist, then I read at events and I go to writers' groups and I read at gigs and festivals across Scotland. And one project that I did was I got a commission to think of innovative ways to preserve oral traditions in endangered communities. So I wrote a piece called Literary Skullduggery, and that's Shetland's history as a narrative poem. And I started off taking snippets of Gothic folk tales and mixing them with poems. And I wrote some poems about castles that fell to ruins. They were called like Beelzebub and his minions. One about the capital, one called the Stone Solitaire Islands, about a skeletal Viking, and one about the clearances, that was called the Fiddler Yow, and that was about a fiddle playing yow leading people astray. Then I typed it in an old-fashioned font and presented it as a manuscript.
Oh, wow. And how are you getting on with that?
Well, that one I finished, and it's something that I read at events, and I'll be publishing that next. That's the next thing I want to do. I have an excellent publisher that I would recommend, called Mary Turner Thompson, and she's with the
All
Book
right.
Whisperers, and she published my book, The A Toon Built Upon Shenanigans, and it's available on Amazon.
Wow. And I have heard of her, and I do recommend her. She's really lovely woman. And I think she's great because she accepts all of us as we are, and there's no kind of, she doesn't worry about our learning disabilities or our physical disabilities. She's very kind of down to earth and very lovely. I myself have actually considered maybe sending her stuff. I just haven't had the confidence yet, but I maybe might send her one of my crime novels. You never know. Because I've never written crime before, so I teamed up with an American detective actually, and he's helping me write this novel set in Shetland, but with an American crime. So yeah, it's very interesting. So I'm dipping my toe in lots of different things, and I'm sure you do the same.
Yes, you're right. My writing is very experimental, so I like using old and new words, mixing genres, taking characters for fairy tales, rhyme and slang, and mixing them together. So yes, I would say I do that very much so. I try to be open to whatever I hear or read in magazines and adverts and conversations and signs. So yes, that's right.
We'll have to get you to write some stories about what it's like to be a young actress on a Shetland stage where everybody knows you.
Oh,
And if
yeah.
you make a mistake, they tell you.
Oh yes, that's very true. Yeah. Yes.
That would be a good one, actually, yeah.
Definitely. Yes, with Shetland Youth Theatre, I was in Macbeth. I played a witch in a castle at Scalwa, and that was really good fun.
Yeah, I was, as you know, I was in with Izzy Swanson's Young Lyric group.
Yeah.
And I actually started with her when I was 8, with a bit of an awkward age. And I actually worked with John right up till I was 18. And I left just as I was turning 19. And I did performances in Edinburgh with him. I was in, do you remember the Ice Palace one where the girl, it's a story about two girls and one girl gets locked in an ice palace, and it's all about the kids searching for her and things like that?
Yes, I didn't see it, but that would be a really good plot. That sounds like an excellent story.
It was a Norwegian writer, and so we did that play, and we ended up going to Edinburgh with it. And I played the girl trapped in the ice, which is my role. And yeah, it was really good. And I think I did quite a few different plays with John, and I did what's known as we did like a free stand-in one where there was no script. We wrote the script as we went along, kind of thing.
Oh, yes.
So that was interesting. I'd never done that before, and that was quite testing, I must admit, because we all tried to remember what our lines were, but we hadn't written it down, so it was all kind of fun and games. So yeah, we did that, and Izzy had me play one of the big roles in her Selkies story.
Oh, yes.
Because we had a dropout last minute. As happens in youth year, somebody gets sick and can't do it, so I had 24 hours to learn one of the lead lines, and I was like, oh no.
That's amazing.
But I managed it, I must admit, so yeah.
Good. And I like to improvising, because in my own play that it's just been recorded, the actors improvised as part of the rehearsals, and it was surprising what they could come up with. So that is an excellent exercise.
It was, and I think as teenagers, because we all had different sort of ideas and thoughts and things, it helped us all kind of, I don't want to say blend together, but that is what we did. It kind of united us a little bit, because some of us were from Lerwick, some of them from the west side, some of them was from up north, so it was, and some of them was from Sudan, so we were all kind of from different areas and didn't really know each other, and yeah, it was really good. And John always had some interesting exercises that he liked to use. We did trapped. Yeah, he is. We did trapped in ice. We did like this little container where you were trapped in this container and you'd convince him to let you out. So you had to sort of, but you couldn't talk. So you had to mime things to try and get him to convince you to let him out. That one always stuck with me because he did that one quite a few times. So yeah, I was always one of the second or third people that managed to get it.
I see. That sounds very thought-provoking.
It is. It was very, you really had to think it through. You had some people trying to dig out, and he's like, oh no, you can't dig out. And then we had some people trying to break the glass, and he was saying, you can't break the glass. And, there was like, you never quite knew what the rules were going to be every time you did it. So, you kind of had to go on the fly a little bit and just hope you got to the opposite end.
Oh, yeah. That's
yeah,
good.
So we're going to talk about some books that you've been reading as the next portion of the podcast. Now, this is kind of where we talk about things that we've enjoyed reading or we've been thinking about, because one of the things that I know for certain with my dyslexia and my disabilities is if I have to constantly read to keep on top of my dyslexia and to help with my creative process, and just so I understand what books are out there, what people are reading and what people are enjoying, and kind of to help guide me with my own writing. So what book have you read recently that you would have said has stuck with you the most?
Well, there was one book I read called Wales, The Unexpected, and it was about Roald Dahl's childhood in Wales and how that influenced his writing, because as an adult he wrote Tales of the Unexpected, so that's kind of a play on the title, and it gives you a background of what inspired his titles and the plots for his stories and why he was so inclined towards magic. And his parents were Norwegian, so his stories are like Norwegian folktales turned upside down with trolls and giants and stuff. And I've read his biographies and autobiographies, and this book just totally encapsulated him as a person, and his connection to Dylan Thomas. He was so inspired by his work, and he wrote in a shed in a boathouse, so Roald Dahl wanted to write in a shed too, and I think that encouraged his creativity. So that's a book that I would really recommend.
That's a really good one, yeah. And I think there's so many different books out there now that you just never quite know when you're picking up, is this going to be a good one? Is this one for me? So it's good to sort of hear from other people, like what they're enjoying or what they're reading. I myself have been reading Forever by Maggie Staffier. And it's just a werewolf book. It's about, this curse where some of them have become werewolves, and then they came up with this idea to stop them turning into werewolves. But now it seems to be making them sick, so they're trying to figure out a way to cure it. And it seems to be a really good adventure story so far.
Yeah.
So if you could sit with anyone for any amount of time and just talk, what author out of everybody in the world would you pick, past or present, they could be alive or dead, would you pick to sit and talk to?
Well, again, I would love to have met Roald Dahl. He was just such an inspiring man, how he could find magic in everything. He had so many interests and hobbies. He wrote books that'll always be classics. How he came up with characters and observations and added funny and amazing names and titles. And I think that he would probably be interested in what I said. So I would find it a comfort. And I think that he thought like a magician. And we would have a lot in common, and he was really cheeky. And
he was, yeah.
Yes. Yes, so all round, I think, yes, my childhood hero, and that would have, yeah, I'd just love to have met him.
Yeah, I think you would have had some fun stories that maybe you hadn't told yet.
Yes,
That we could,
yes.
we could definitely learn from. I think that's a good way of putting it.
Very much so.
What author would you say, past or present, who's influenced, inspired, and made you excited, not just about books, but writing and the spoken word in general?
Well, Dylan Thomas is a Welsh poet, and he put a lot of thought into his work. He too experimented with wordplay, and he was very observant. He did really unexpected things with words. He's very influential. I think that he always will be, and I would love to think that my writing, well, it's definitely influenced by him. So I just think that he's another hero. He definitely is.
He's a really good one, yeah. I would say he's a pioneer that people don't necessarily know a lot about. Yes. And I think that's a really good one, and it's good that you've chosen him for the podcast, because otherwise, he wouldn't have been really been mentioned, I don't think, by anybody. So yeah, that was a really good one.
Yeah, thank you. And Under Milk Wood was very influential in my play. That was one of the things that encouraged me to write the play, because it made me think of a village in Shetland. And yes, really talented man.
You could go back in time, and you could go back to any time. What time would you go back to, and would you go back as a writer?
Yes, I would definitely go back to Victorian times, because there was Addie's inventions, and there was writers like Oscar Wilde, and I understand his approach with fairy tales. And Dickens, who had this amazing books that he wrote, like Great Expectations and A Christmas Carol. And Alice in Wonderland was too, by Lewis Carroll. And that's a very influential book with the characters, again, and Gims. And I've read a lot about the man that wrote its background. And he spent a lot of time in the northeast of England. So there's a book called Alice in Sunderland, and that explains how he was influenced by the dialect and stuff, and that comes through in his books. So it's very cleverly written, and I think that would be such a very inspiring time.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, it was always Victorian times, I must admit, and I would want to go back as a writer, and I think because Mary Bunton, who's a very, not very famous, I should say, Orkney writer, was the inspiration for Jane Austen, believe it or not. So I wonder if, being back there in that time as a writer, I can maybe add Shetland to that list of famous writers. So, yeah, I would go back and definitely try and make Shetland famous for that.
It's really interesting, yeah, that's nice to know.
Yeah, it was very. I didn't realise that Mary Bunton had actually gone and been the inspiration for Jane. In fact, what she inspired was that cheekiness, that sarcasm that she has in her work, and that way where she'll maybe suddenly do something that's just out of the ordinary or things like that, and that really came from Mary and the way that Mary was writing at her time. And the book that everybody seems to know from Mary Bunton is a book called Self-Care. So if you get a chance, you should look that up.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you ever picked up a book and wished that you'd never picked it up? And why do you think that might be?
Well, there was one book I read and I was disappointed, and I'll not say the title just in case it's a book that's very popular, and it was a band, and they tried to be really famous and successful, and although they never made it, it was still a really interesting story, because they got up to lots of mischief along the way, and I really admired their ambition. And one of the members wrote a book about it, and it could have been a really interesting story, but it just wasn't as good as the film, and I thought that was a shame. It included a lot of boring details, so I thought that was a pity.
Yeah, I think sometimes when it comes to writing, you need to be able to balance the description of what's going on and the action, and that's a really hard balance to get. Yeah. And I think there is a lot of writers out there who have fantastic concepts, but just don't know how to quite pull it off. And I think that's maybe one of the things that you're seeing in that book, is that the balance wasn't quite right. And that is what a good editor is for. A good editor is for helping you realize that your balance is off, and that maybe you need to go back and look at it and see how you can rebalance it and make it work for both of you. So
yes, that's a very good point.
Yeah. It's weird to think of all the different jobs that there is along the way of publishing. You also have copywriters who, again, check the work to make sure there's no spelling mistakes or grammar mistakes, but they also have to make sure that there's no plot holes. So they're kind of almost like the last line to make sure that there's nothing majorly wrong with the novel before it's released.
That's very true, and I enjoy every aspect of my writing career, and it's a thing where you need to have a big skill set, because you need to be able to promote it, advertise it, do the checks, as you say, the administration. So it's something that certainly gives you a lot of experience.
And sometimes takes over your entire life.
Yeah.
Because when I started out, I knew nothing. I was self-taught, and I had to learn marketing, and I had to learn editing, and I had to learn writing itself. There's so many techniques in writing nowadays.
Yes.
So I didn't have any of those skills when I started out. So I spent a long time over my 14 years writing. Professionally writing, learning all the different aspects of the industry, and I got opportunities to do an internship at a literacy agency, and that helped me understand it from a literacy agent point of view. I had a lot of friends that were editors, and then they explained the editing side of things to me, and I learned, once I learned all the whole different sort of process it goes through, I find my writing much improved, because I was able to say, well, okay, to make this better, I can sit with it, and I can maybe work on this and get it better balanced, or get my grammar better, or my spelling better, and I was able to make it a much smoother process. And it allowed me to work with independent publishers, in the US and in the UK, and do some crazy things like do a book tour that I never expected to do, or end up doing this podcast and being interconnected with a lot of authors all over the world. So yeah, that's the great thing about writing. It is a fraternity. We're all connected some way or somehow. So
yes, definitely, and it sounds like you've got a really good background in your writing.
Yeah. I think now I do. I wouldn't have said I did at the beginning, but it takes years, and I think that's what people don't realize, is you don't just sit down and write a book. It takes years of hard work and persistence, and knowing, okay, today I have to do so many words, and then I need to sit and do 10, 15 minutes of marketing, and then I need to go and make sure I've got all my emails done. So it's a constant thing, and it's a good process to understand, so that you don't let the ball drop in all the areas.
Yeah, I like that expression, no letting the bar drop, because it is like spinning plates. You have to add these things like prioritise them and give them equal amounts of time. So that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, and I feel like the more that I've learned, the better way I have of explaining it nowadays. If you'd asked me about 12 years ago, I probably wouldn't have been able to explain it as well. So yeah. So moving into the writing portion of the podcast, this is where we talk about techniques and how we go about writing and all the different elements that's involved. Yes. How did you go about creating the darker elements of your story, the struggles, as I like to call it, the sort of things that they had to overcome, the obstacles?
Well, what I try to do is, I've struggled a lot with poverty, because I'm autistic, I find it difficult to get a job, and I've experienced failure. And what I do with those things is I transform them into something positive. So I make it humorous. That's one thing that I do. And how I approach my writing is I think on my mind is like plasticine, and the more I tweak it, then the more that I come up with. It's like a muscle. So I try to turn negatives into positives, and that's a kind of cathartic process.
It is, and it's good to do that because writing is it's so opinionated. It's about somebody's perspective.
Yeah.
That you kind of have to be able to roll with the punches and have a thicker skin than most people. Because this is an opinion on something that you spent a lot of time working on. It's something that you've put a lot of money into, sometimes too. If you're paying for a private editor, or if you're going and you're doing different things. So yeah, I think it's can be rough when somebody says they don't like something or they aren't taking it on. But it's not, funnily enough, I've learned over the years, it's not really about your talent or your concept. It's really about what the market's offering or what they think they can sell in the market. So I think that helps a little bit with the rejection almost, because sometimes it really isn't you. It's the situation.
Yes, I agree, and I have had that with publishers totally. And what I do with some of my poetry is environmental, so I imagine like animals telling humans off for the state of the environment, like nagging them about oil spills and saying things like Adam and Eve's garden is repossessed. And that's a thing that I do, is I take these negatives but highlight them with humour.
Yeah, and I think that's really good because in Shetland in particular we have a lot of wildlife and we have a lot of environment that has suffered over the years. So I think it's good because we're able to take those issues and really kind of show the world, well, hey, we live at the top end of all this. We see the most silliest of things, and having that animal to human ratio, I think, makes it easier for all walks of life to understand it rather than maybe select groups. I think that's really good.
Thank you. Yes, because I'm really inspired by that. When I'm home in Shetland, I spend hours walking over the hills and on the beaches, and I'm inspired by like the archaeology and the ruins and wildlife like the seals and the puffins, and I feel like they contribute so much. So I love it when it comes through in my writing.
Yeah, and I mean, I did the same. I used to spend a lot of time walking around Lerwick and kind of getting, because like that's what you do when you're a teenager in Shetland. You tend to walk about because there's not much else to do sometimes. So I like to go down on the beach and read, or go sit by the cliffs and things like that. So I can understand it, and it's good because I particularly I was with my husband who's never really lived on island life before, so. As you know, the seal in Lerwick likes to jump on the fishing boat and get his taxes, as he likes to call it, maybe, when he gets given a fish and then he leaves again. So, I can always see that in my head of them telling people off and saying, "Oi, where's my quota here?" So yeah. What inspired you to pick the type of writing that you did? What drew you to doing poetry and sort of the spoken word? Why would you say you felt drawn to that?
I fell into it by accident because I wrote as a child and then I took it seriously again as a teenager, and I thought that I was writing historical fiction, like similar to Catherine Cook's and stuff. And then when people read it, what they said was that it was like magic realism. So the everyday merges with dreams, and people transform into mythical characters, and houses turn into castles. So, and it's fantasy, and everything I've written since then, people have told me the same thing. It's very fantasy-based. And I started doing poetry readings at writers' groups and open mic sessions. And at first I was really shy and nervous, but people said kind things, so that gave me confidence to do it more and more. And I found that one opportunity is led to another. And so I suppose I stumbled into them both by accident, because I never thought when I was younger that I was going to be getting all these chances to do the spoken word stuff. But I'm really inspired by folk musicians like Dougie MacLean, and he goes around like Perthshire singing and getting filmed. So I do that too. I've been filmed in Shetland recording poetry. So I really enjoyed that kind of thing, and I wanted to share it and entertain people with it. So it's those elements that come together.
Well, that's really good, and I think the more of us that represent Shetland now on a global scale is, better. And I particularly find that, I've been doing that with screenwriting. I've been doing it with the podcast and the books. I think I'm the first Shetland writer to sell out all copies of our book in LA. So, for me, I kind of took that banner up of I want Shetland to be seen as a positive and as a kind of globally as a great creative place with great-minded people, and we've always sort of been storytellers, I think, in Shetland, because those winters are long and dark, and we have to think of something to get through those winters. So I think storytelling has been in our DNA from the very beginning, and I think that's important to share. And it's lovely to hear you mention Catherine Cookson, because she was an idol of mine. I actually have of her books now. And I read them quite a lot because, as you said, she writes as she speaks, and she wrote about things that she saw and she lived through, and talked about mental health issues, and talked about racism and equality, and the fact that there was an equality with disabled people, and there was an equality with women and men back in those days. So to me, she was a great inspiration to kind of keep that fight going and say, hey, we should be treated equally, and I call her my kick up the butt book for when I don't have confidence, or I've lost the kind of will to get up and write. I read her and I just think, well, if she can do it with all her health issues, then what am I doing lying here? So I get up and I get writing, and she keeps me writing too. So yeah.
Well, that's really good. That's a great credit to her. And I too like to tackle subjects that things like my play was inspired by mental health. I'm hoping that it'll help people feel better and they'll be entertained and get comfort for it. And Shetland certainly does have a storytelling tradition, because I like the thought of people coming together and making their own entertainment. And there's so much inspiration and stories you can draw for, right, for the Norse myths and legends through time. And when I was writing that narrative poem, Literary Skullduggery, I just immersed myself in Shetland, like literature and Viking stories and supernatural stories, and then the writing just kind of emerged for it. So yes, you're right.
It does flow. I think Shetlanders have this way where we just kind of, because we talk all the time and we share a lot, we're very people that like to share things like our lives and how we're getting on. I think it just kind of flows out from us. And when we're having writer's block, it's not really writer's block. It's a moment of not having confidence and not believing in the story that we might be telling. Yes. So for me, it's really important to sort of reach into the writer's groups of Shetland and say, I got told I couldn't publish. I got told I wasn't good enough. And guess what? I've been published a lot. And I am still publishing today. And I'm working with people all over the world to create new stories and to bring messages of hope and inspire people. And that is something I'm going to keep doing. And I think that's a good thing. I feel sad that I can't live in Shetland because of my own health issues. There's not enough medical support in Shetland for somebody like me. But I do like to come back, and I hope that when my new Shetland novel, the Midwife series set in Shetland, about rural midwives, comes out, that I might come back and do a reading the library. Maybe they'll invite me back to do that, or I might get to come back and talk to some of the writers and some of the teenagers about writing and what it takes to do that.
Definitely, I think that would be a popular story that would be really welcomed at home.
Yeah, I think so too, and the idea of it is highlighting what it was like to be a midwife in the rural community, so Yell and Unst and Bettler and sort of these 6 girls, they start off being these just newly turned midwives, and then they get sent from Dundee up to Shetland, and they end up falling in love with the locals, and they have all these sort of trying things that they have to overcome, and they learn about themselves, and they end up staying, and they end up marrying, and they end up making their lives there. So it's really positive stories. And I am working with a writing coach on that, who's been so lovely to take me on her books, and she's working with me on that. And so yeah, I hope in about 9 months' time, maybe I'll have been a publisher, and I can come back and talk to everybody about it. I think it'll be a great Christmas, sock stuffer, for the fireplace. And I was just inspired just because of the island medics and, the doctors that go up to Shetland and they give 6 months of their lives to help the locals and take care of locals, and we get all these wonderful surgeons that goes up and does the same. So yeah, I think that's that was the inspiration behind it, and I think it's a great way of highlighting some of the problems that Shetland's medical stuff has, but in a positive way, and saying that, maybe we could do with you sending 6 young midwives up to Shetland to study and learn how to work in a rural community, and maybe we might settle and we solve the midwife problem that Shetland's got at the moment. So.
Good luck with that, yes.
Yes, it's nice to have different stories that highlights different elements of Shetland, and I think that's quite a good one. So when you write your material, is it a movie in your head, or do you kind of see like a jigsaw puzzle that you've got to move the pieces together to get it to tell the story?
I'm very inspired by films. I spend a lot of time at the cinema, and that gives me ideas for plots, and that it introduces me to characters and actors and backgrounds and styles. And I have a big DVD collection, so sometimes I watch the same films over and over again. And I would say, yes, that I would love if my stories could be made into films. So I would say that I definitely approach it with that angle.
Yeah, I'm the same, but I've worked with different people, and I would like to see one of my pieces of the film too. And it's great because I've learned a lot from going and writing screenplays, which is different to scripts you'd see on a stage. A lot more complicated than I actually thought. And I actually did write a script for Shetland, which I've never handed over to the Shetland Island, the Shetland Drama Club, but I might one day. And it's about a lass who is scared about going to university and about leaving the island, and it's about her journey going south and trying to make friends with all these people, and having people maybe not understand her because she uses different words, and she has a different way of looking at life and a different way of doing things, and we follow her through that journey and her falling in love for the first time and really becoming an adult who lives on the island, and then making the decision about going home and about taking her skills that she's learned down the road back home. It's a really positive story.
That's really interesting. That reminds me of Sunset Song. And if I get funding again, the next thing that I'll do is I'm hoping to take my play to schools and hopefully make it into a graphic novel and an animated film. I'd love to work with someone like Pixar or Tim Burton.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great animation studios that can do little trailers for you that can help it be made. I have a few people I can put you in touch with for that. And Yeah, so don't, if you get that far, let me know. And I think I actually do know a place that does graphic novels, but I'll need to check that.
Oh, yes.
Because there's so many different. You would need to find an illustrator who draws all your stuff, and then you need to present both the book script for your illustration and the actual illustration pictures you're going to use to the publisher, and then they put it all together for you. But you may be able to find a Shetland artist that could do that for you.
That's very true. That's a good idea. I have published 2 graphic novels already, but we just chose pictures off the internet because I couldn't afford the artist. And I just think, yes, if I had an actual artist or illustrator, that would give it a real magic touch.
You might be able to find funding with the Writers Guild. If you go to the UK Writers Guild, there's a lot of good stuff there. And particularly if you're looking for doing local themed plays and films, there's always Screen Scotland. They always have funding for people that are trying to do things that promote their local areas. And if you can sort of show how it would be beneficial for Shetland and for people that maybe aren't as represented, then they might be able to guide you and help you with that.
Well, that's excellent. That's really good leads. I'll make sure I follow them. Thank you.
Yeah, it's no problem. I like sharing what I know because I think there's not enough of these conversations where we're sharing, what we all know, what each other know, and things like that. And I think if we start having these conversations, then things aren't going to seem quite so big, and obstacles don't feel quite so horrendous, I think. And I'll definitely be sure to make sure that I reach out. I'll get you to resend me the name again for the Shetland publisher, and because I have one that I think she might like, and it's called Shetland Royals.
Oh yes,
and it's about the history of the bus project in Shetland.
Oh yes,
and it's about a family who. I kind of take the old royals. You remember how we connected to the royal family? We had an earl and a lady, and I take that idea, but I put it in the setting of them getting involved in the bus project and running it, and how that changes everything, and how they end up changing their way of looking at marriage and looking at relationships and looking at family relationships. And it's really a nice series just about that. It's just about people's struggle in Shetland during the Second World War, and about how Shetland played a huge role in the war itself.
Yes, that sounds like a fascinating story. I would love to read that. The publisher that I mentioned was Edinburgh based, but she would still be really interested, I'm sure, to hear your story.
Yeah, I would love that. So if you send that along to me after this interview, then I will definitely look into it, keep you apprised, and as I said, maybe we can have an event in Shetland where we can all get together and I can do a reading and you can come up and do some poetry, and we can share the event and make it an inclusive writers event for all writers in Shetland.
Yes, I would look forward to that. That would be really exciting.
I think that would be lovely for all of us, I think, and everybody involved.
Yes, yeah.
So during your time writing, has there been a character that's stuck around with you, maybe, that's, like, while you've been writing other things, you've kind of thought of this character?
Yes, well, in A Tune Built Upon Shenanigans, there's the 3 characters, the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, and they each have disabilities, although I don't mention that in the script. Bailey, the butcher, has dyslexia, Barnum, the baker, has autism, and Conrad, the candlestick maker, has dyspraxia and schizophrenia. And when I thought about it, Barnum, the baker, has autism the same as me, so I think the same way that he does. And he has strategies to overcome obstacles and how he explains things. And if he was getting support, he would really flourish as a baker, as I do. When I get support, then I do things better. And I think if I was to explore how he thinks more and how he relates to people, it would give me a better understanding of my own life, and it would help me develop him as a character, and people have told me about characters in the play that they can relate to, and for me, I think that's the one that I would definitely think on as a soulmate.
Yeah, and I think I'll definitely, send some people that I think, send you information for people that I think will help you with your writing journey and your writing career. I have a coach that's really good for supporting people along the process, and then I have a great editor that I highly recommend because she's really good at piecing dyslexia together and helping people with learning disabilities, particularly when they're trying to get ready to send stuff to a publisher. So I'll send you along her information too. She, each editor does different things. So if you write a different genre, let me know and I can send you to somebody else. And I can see what I can do to help you along with your journey.
Thank you. I don't have dyslexia, but I'm still always willing to hear about anyone that can help me on my writing journey, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading, I use her for my dyslexia, sorry. But, with your autism, sometimes you can get caught up in your own thoughts, and it's maybe not translated to your writing. You're writing from your mind to your page very well, so she can give you just a little bit of support and guidance and things like that to help you maybe get it down in a better way so that it's a bit easier to read or to make little things clearer. I know that she's done that for me because sometimes I think faster than I can write or talk. So as Shetlanders, we talk very fast normally. So the computer system's not really good for us to sit and talk to. So she's good for cleaning those little things up.
Good.
Is it a character that you wish you had written more about?
Well, I think if I had come across the characters, the three characters, the Butcher, the Baker and Candlestick Maker, if I'd come across them when I was younger, that might have helped. I got inspired by one of the things that inspired me to write it was the Three Men in a Tub. It was a commission I got for a poem inspired by a painting. And again, if I had thought up Barnum when I was younger, then I think that he would have been a guide for me. So I think it would have been good if I'd been introduced to him in my mind earlier in my life. And I think that would have been a kind of a representation of me in my writing.
Oh no, I totally understand that. I've had characters that I was like, where were you 10 years ago? So and for me particularly, when I open the door to my, what I call my creative world, it's like a universe. Every path takes me to a new story.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just wander down a path and you just go with whatever you find there. And whether it's, you're writing a crime book or a romance novel, you just go with it and you just write what you feel and you write that great story down to share with other people.
Yes, you can be surprised with what you come up with.
Yeah. What techniques have you found helpful, and which ones do you wish that you maybe hadn't tried?
Well, Michael Morpurgo, the children's author, I spoke to him at the Edinburgh Book Festival, and he said, every day write how you feel, happy, sad, confused, or whatever. And that is an excellent technique because that really helps the writing flow. And another thing is, I approach my writing like a magician. My dad's a retired carpenter, and I think that what he does with wood, I do with words. So I love to tweak the words, change the shape, size, font, and be really playful and experimental with them. And again, because my mind is like a muscle, it's like plasticine. So the more you do that, the more creative it makes you. The one thing that I did not enjoy in the creative process was when I was a student and I had to collaborate. And because as a writer you can be very self-contained, and I found that difficult to, suppose, just the whole process. I just preferred to work on my own. But in recent years I've collaborated a lot with actors and artists and knew it's a really fun process where I can share my ideas and get constructive criticism and my contribution and this is really valued. So new collaboration is a really useful technique. So I suppose it's good to be open-minded.
Yeah, and I myself, I was never sure about writing with somebody. And then I wrote with a famous wrestler. And I thought, what am I getting myself into here? But it was great because it was, I loved wrestling and I loved romance and I loved that sort of thing, and I was a retired dancer. But I had to try and think of how to solve it together.
Yeah.
And he kind of was great for just reining in my ideas and saying, well, maybe we do it this way, or maybe we can do it this way. And he taught me a lot about sort of getting from one place to the next, and what's the journey from one place to the next.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really good. And he really was good at slowing me down and saying, right, let's take our time with this. Let's make sure we're doing it right. And I feel like he taught me a lot about wrestling and a lot about what it takes to be involved in wrestling. It's, there's writing involved behind the scenes, and there's decisions where they have to make about who's going to be champion or who's going to wrestle who, and all that kind of was broken down for me, and I learned so much from him. And it actually allowed me to go on and study under a famous wrestling writer, and I learned from another wrestler, and I got to know these people really well, and it helped to improve my writing in a way that I wouldn't have necessarily considered. So I always try and say to people, being co-authors is not a bad thing.
Yes.
Co-authorship is a good thing, because you can really learn from each other, and you can explore and learn different things. So try as much as you can to do that, and try talking to different publishers and different people, because their perspectives and their thoughts can be really helpful, especially if you're wanting a job in the industry, especially if you're wanting to be a paid writer full time. It's really important to do that and to learn all these different areas and techniques and things like that.
Yeah, that's well said.
So, has there been a technique that you would say that you've used that you weren't a fan of? Was there something that you tried and you thought, this isn't really for me?
Yes, sometimes in writers' groups, when we're made to do exercises and you've got like a limited vocabulary, sometimes that can be very challenging because you're put under pressure to come up with something, and you're not satisfied with it. I mean, I'm open-minded to lots of exercises, but that kind of thing can be tricky. And some people, and another thing I don't like is competition. I think that writing should be about having pleasure and fun, and it shouldn't be about like people being overly like critical about it in an academic way, or people competing for marks and that kind of thing. I find that very off-putting.
It is very off-putting, and I think that it's becoming more competitive now, I think, than what it was maybe 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago.
Yes.
And to me, that's not what writing's about. Writing's about sharing your story. It's about sharing a different world. It's about introducing ideas, tackling everyday issues today, because that's the only way that we can tackle these things. And that would be, that would be my message to writers groups, is that don't make it competition. Make it about the quality of the characters, the quality of the story.
Yeah.
And make it about that writer's journey and about teaching them, not about criticizing them, but teaching them this is maybe a different way to go, or this is maybe a different thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And, you never know, you might find it incredibly releasing. It will feel like the chains are coming off. It will feel like it's a much better process.
Yes, very much so. And when I write about things like autism and learning difficulties and mental health, then I found it like such a comfort, and I felt like I had cleared a lot of baggage. So very much so, it's such a cathartic process. I think it's really healthy for your mental health.
It is. It is very important, and I think the more that we raise issues of how we're feeling and the things that we're going through is very, very important. And I think we can learn a lot.
Yes.
And one of the things that I'm going to do for you that I find really helpful is I was working with a group called 1 in 4 Writers Coalition Group. And they mentor writers, particularly writers that maybe want to see their writing in film, who maybe want to see their writing go into a different direction, and learn about the industry and learn about being mentored. If it's, say, you want to do illustration, or you want animation, or you want live action, and it's film industry, and it's really good. So today I will send an email introducing you to the Disability Writers group that I am friends with, and let them get to know you, introduce you, and say this is somebody that's a writer who really fancies doing a little bit more animation and learning about it, and explaining, that you're like me, you've got dyslexia, or you've got a learning disability, and you come from Shetland, and you don't have the same opportunities as a lot of people, and let you work with them, see what you learn, and see what experiences you get to have.
Well, that would be brilliant. Yes, see, in the arts, it's about why and making connections, and that's a way to get established, and that would be a brilliant opportunity.
Yeah, and that's what I've always said, is I believe in helping writers in Shetland connect with people that are not in Shetland. So my time in Los Angeles was really good for me, because I met people and then I connected in with other people, and it's been able to grow my network. And it's been, I like giving back, and this is something that I can do to give back to people in Shetland, and to give back to the writers that are not getting the same opportunities as other people.
Well, that's a really good point. I live in Glasgow and I've lived in Edinburgh, so I go to a lot of the groups across Scotland, and that's a really good way to put it. Yes, I as well think like we can all rise like boats at the same time, so definitely I share opportunities too.
I'm maybe a bit more biased because I tend to give a little bit more help to people from Shetland. I don't know if that's because we all share the same blood, or we have all shared the same torture of the long winters. But yeah, I do tend to be slightly biased and help Shetland people more. But yeah, it's an honour to be able to introduce you to them, and to, they're really lovely people, and they're very down to earth, so you should find it well, and you should find it a great experience, so I don't mind doing that at all. So moving into your life, now this is where we really break down barriers, because we're allowing people to get to know you as a person. So there's a lot of I would say myths about us as writers, that we're antisocial, or that we live in mansions with servants that does all the cleaning and the dishes and cooks meals and stuff for us, which isn't true. So this is a good way of dispelling that and just getting to know us as people. Sound good?
Yes, yeah.
What's the first thing that you do when you want to de-stress from writing and that whole process? What do you like to do?
Well, I go for long walks in the country, and as well, I go to the cinema. I follow what films are coming up. I watch the trailers, and then I just love the whole thing about the cinema. It's really nice. You get to see what more films are coming up, and then if it's one about a genre or a character or a story, like an autobiographical thing, then I'll look forward to it, and it's just so relaxing sitting back and seeing the story unfold, and it's just really relaxing. It just I just get completely immersed in the story, and I focus in on every detail, like the actors and the story, the plot, the twists and turns, and it's just a really satisfying experience. And if it's a film that I've enjoyed, I'll watch it 2 or 3 times, and then get the DVD. And one film I really enjoyed was called In the Heights, and it was by the same man that made Hamilton. And it was about people in America in a street, and there was a lot of hip hop right from the beginning. They took inspiration for everywhere, like being in the shop and the swimming pool and on a night out, and just everyday things. They were able to make songs and poetry and rap about it, and that's the same way that I do. I take inspiration for the everyday, and there was a plot, and it was just very resourcefully done, and it's the kind of thing that has given me just so much inspiration since then.
That's really good, and I think that's, it's a great way to de-stress. Mine, because I'm not as, I don't get out as much, because I stay really far in the country.
Yeah.
I tend to do old Shetland things. I knit, and I cross-stitch, and I sew, and I embroider, and these things really help me kind of calm myself.
Yes.
And it's almost like feeling a little bit like I'm back in Shetland, sitting by the fire with the snow falling down outside. It's just a really good way of feeling not so as homesick as sometimes I get.
Yes, I ken what you mean. Yes, I love like scribbling. I like doing things with my hands, and I find that keeps me content. So that's a kind of alternative to that.
I think it's good as well if you can do things that keep your hands busy if you're sitting watching stuff too, because my nan always talked about idle hands.
Oh yes.
Idle hands was never a good thing in her book. So she always had me doing something, whether it was drawing or whether it was sewing or knitting. She was very kind of positive about that and about doing things that's beneficial for the folk around you,
Yeah, very much so. Yes, it's good to keep busy.
What hobbies do you enjoy? And is there ones that you wish you could explore more?
Well, I love to read things like about history and literature and things like that, folklore and anthropology, storytelling, and that gives me I find it really satisfying doing research about factual stuff, and I read a lot about magic and magicians because I think their process is very similar to mine. So I would like, if I had even more time, then I could read even more. I love gathering information and facts, and I was just working in the summer at the language school, and one of the things we have to do is take students on trips. So for example, when we took them to Edinburgh, then I told them about the Walter Scott monument, and I was able to get information about him through my own research. So that's something that I enjoy.
Yeah, and that's really important too, because we don't want to lose our Scottish heritage.
Yes.
And I think if we don't do these sort of tours and these conversations, we will lose that, and that would be extremely sad. And I don't think we ever want to be in a situation where we lose that happiness and we lose that part of ourselves that makes us really Scottish.
Definitely, because preserving culture and traditions is something that I'm really interested in. And at one of the groups that I read with is Our Vice, and that's a showcase of the Scottish dialect. So I read my Shetland dialect poems, and the last time on Burns Night, then I read the Fiddler Yow, the one about the clearances, and that's a great way to showcase Scotland.
Yeah, it is, and I think with Shetland, I think some people feel more connected to Denmark, and some people feel more connected to Scotland, and I think it's a good way of reminding all of us that we're connected to both,
yes,
and that we should be proud of both.
Very much so.
Do you like crafts? And do you find crafts a good way for clearing your mind and maybe helping you solve a writer's issue?
Well, during my degree, I did a kind of alternative creative writing degree, and it was called performance writing, but it wasn't about writing scripts. It was about doing things with writing off the page so you could write better on it. And with that, then I studied things about like storytelling and anthropology and making theatre, like devising and making models. And I enjoyed that. We were given a few days, you had to go away and come back with a product. And that was another way of accessing your imagination. So that was a time that I dabbled in that. And I've no done any of that kind of craft things since then, but definitely it's still a process that I would use in my mind that benefited me. Definitely, I think that helped make me be more creative.
Do you think you sort of your experiences in Shetland might have, made you more interested in crafts and more interested in making things?
Well, yes, there are lots of things that I get inspiration for in Shetland. The linguistics, like the place names, even new. A Scandinavian can look at a Shetland place name and get an accurate description of what the place means. The heritage with the Norse myths and legends and the ruins and the fishing and the crafting and the folklore and nature. Because I imagine the animals can speak. When you said about living in palaces with servants, I could just see animals like that. And because I got to play on a craft as a child, then that definitely helped me be creative as an adult. So, and I played with Lego a lot. I still like that. So I suppose Lego is a form of craft. So I suppose I dabble in that.
Yeah, and that's really good. I find particularly if I'm writing a lot and I get to that point where I'm frustrated, then if I go away and I do crafts for a while, like I'm making a quote for my mother-in-law, it just sometimes releases that little bit of strain that drops the answer that I've been looking for and sort of tearing myself apart over, and it's really good. It's really good to kind of do that and find yourself answers that you wouldn't otherwise think of, I think. Because crafting, it's a very, you're doing something without really thinking about it. I think us Shetlanders have gotten in the way of doing that.
Yes.
And that allows our minds to sort of calm themselves and help us think things through.
That's a really good way to put it. See, if I'm writing and then I get, say, writer's block, or I can't come up with a word or whatever, and then I go away and say, do the dishes, then I'm still in the zone. So that helps me come up with it. So I'm still in the kind of creative mindset, even though I'm not working on the piece. So that's a very good point.
Yeah, I'm glad that, it's good to find other people that believe the same things as you, and you can see the same things as you, so yeah, it's lovely. I myself have a long-term health illness. I have idiopathic rheumatoid arthritis. That makes me slow down and appreciate the day. What makes sort of you slow down and smell the roses?
Well, I try to be open-minded. In my degree, then we were encouraged to just open your mind to everything, and that will help you be more creative. So I try to focus and observe in the same way that Charles Dickens did. As he was walking along, he absorbed every detail that he saw. So I try to do that. And from having worked in call centres, then you have to focus and concentrate on every single thing a customer says, because sometimes you just have limited information. So I suppose I need to try and because I have autism, that sometimes means I process information slowly. So I think that I just have to think that when I'm writing, if I concentrate, then I'll be able to come up with stuff. So I think that but what would encourage me to get into I just try to think that if I allocate the time to concentrate, then I will be rewarded with ideas coming.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. I slow down myself because I know that my health can't take it.
Yes.
So I can't do, maybe 5 nights right until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning because that's not good for me. Yes. So I've learned different techniques on how to slow it down but not overwhelm myself and adjust to different settings.
Quite right.
My favourite place to curl up during the day is, on my sofa on a sunny day or in the garden. Where's your favourite place to curl up during the day and read? Do you have a favourite sort of spot in your house or in the garden, cafe? Do you have any of those?
In my sitting room where I am just now, then I've got this. I have lots of nice pictures that inspire me. I've got pictures of Norse myths and legends and by artists like Banksy, and they always inspire me. And I've got like this throw that has a big Norse symbol on it. So being surrounded by art, I find a comfort. And being in here, it's like a womb. It's nice just being in the darkness, and it's very kind of meditative. We have an autism. I like having everything in its place. So I kind where everything is, and it's a comfort. It's my base. It's a bit like when you come off stage and you've got that place at the side of the stage, like a dressing room. That's where I go to kind of be away for the world.
Yeah, I never had that luxury. I always had to share my dressing room with people. So it was never tidy. Never tidy. Awful. If you can imagine, 12 females trapped in one room, and we've all got makeup and we've all got stuff, and it just gets everywhere. It's awful. So I understand the need for tidy, or at least to know where everything is.
Yeah.
So now we're moving into the word game portion of the podcast, and this is where we can tie words to the first word that comes to your mind, or if there's a story or a book that comes to mind when you hear that word, and we put it together as a fun little game. Now, the theme of this is where I imagine I would have met you.
Yeah.
So, in an ideal world, of course.
Yeah.
So, in my mind, I'm meeting you in a beautiful cafe in the west side of Glasgow, where there's lots of goodies to have, cakes and all sorts. So that's why I chose these words.
Yeah.
So if you're let me know when you're ready, and we'll dive in.
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, so your first word is chocolate.
Well, I love the book Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Charlie is an underdog, and like him, I always thought or hoped I would get a golden ticket to a publishing deal, and it happened, and I love the story. It's like Dante's Inferno. We had the obstacles that they go through, and then the inventiveness of the story, and it's a classic, and the characters are funny. So for me, I would always associate it with that.
Oh, I like that. That's a really good answer.
Thank you.
Your next one is caramel.
Caramel, well, that's the kind of thing that, again, in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, there would have been a story associated with that, and there was probably a child that really wanted caramel, so they would have gone on some big adventure and gotten into lots of mischief to get him caramel, and probably climbed over lots of obstacles and got nagged for their parents, and then Willy Wonka would have just had to tell them to go home.
I like that. I like the fact he took charge.
Yes.
What about Butterfingers?
Well, I can imagine one of the children, again, would probably have climbed into like a tube or a pipe, and they would have been trying to grab something for a lucky dip, and their fingers would have been all sticky, and again that would have gone against health and safety, so the Oompa Loompas would have had to just go and make the whole batch again.
Okay, yeah, them being very annoyed. I can imagine that. And of course, everybody in Shetland knows about custard cream biscuits. It's like a staple in Shetland for some reason.
Yeah.
So what do you think of when you see custard creams?
Well, that would maybe be the parents trying to get the recipe, and they would sneakily maybe go into an office and try to tap the code of how they could get it, and they would maybe bribe it Oompa Loompa, but they would give them the wrong one as a trick, and it would really be sop that they got.
Yeah, exactly. And cheesecake.
That would be someone that thought they had gotten a recipe that was really posh, but actually it was just out of date and stale, and when they tried to set up a restaurant, it just got shut down.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. Cookies.
Yes. What that would be is the Oompa Loompas would try to steal a batch so that they could run away, but then when they were at customs at the airport, then it got discovered and they were deported.
I like that. And cinnamon swirls.
What that would be is it would be a whirlpool where they try to sail across in the Viking boat, but because it's bad weather, they get disrupted. So instead they have to attack a submarine.
I like that. And finally, last but not least, is coffee.
What that would be is that there's Atlantis at the bottom of the big, huge bucket, and they try to get down there to get treasure, but this is just like trinkets for Christmas cracker jokes, so they can't even get them sold at a car boot sale.
Oh, I like that. I think that would make a good story, what you've all described there. I think we should be seeing that in a book sometime soon.
Thank you. Really good fun.
Well, it's been yeah, it is good fun. So it's been a pleasure to have you on, Chris, with us here today. So I got us, well, we always say this on the show, but when you have another project out or another book out, then please, send me an email and we'll have you back on to discuss it and discuss it a bit more in detail and maybe learn a bit about where the inspiration and stuff has come from. And so it's been a pleasure having you. Listeners, you will be excited to know who we've got next week, but I'm not going to tell you quite yet. You're just going to come back and see. So with that, I'll see you all again next Monday.
Thanks very much, Chris.